rule that will stack up more mandates on electric vehicle production to the tune of something like 2/3 of the production by 2030. Meanwhile, EVs are piling up on the lots of automobile dealerships across the country. That in light of that even if one were to say that we should be moving towards electric vehicles, which I think is a reasonable question to debate in and of itself, would it not be foolish to do that on the back of Chinese production and Chinese cobalt mining?
I believe so, and I think you've done a great job of outlining what I would call Democrat utopia. We're going to have our cake and eat it too. We're going to get rid of fossil fuel. We're going to get rid of internal combustion engine vehicles. We're going to absolutely no sense.
Representative Ocasio-Cortez, what do you say to that point, right? When we've got a significant amount of evidence that China owns the vast majority, if not all, 80% plus of the cobalt mine production coming out of Congo, et cetera. And we know, I think it's irrefuted, that there's child labor exploited to get those minerals. Those minerals are central, if not fully necessary, for the production of EVs, which even objectively we have to acknowledge are not fully able to power the ability of the American public to get to their jobs and their work and so forth. And yet we're mandating that we have 2/3 of the production be EVs by 2030. So if we follow those mandates by the Biden administration, that debate aside, right? Debate for a different day. If you follow those mandates, you got to have a massive, massive amount of battery production. And by all indication, the vast majority of that Congo production is controlled by China. A huge amount of that has child labor and other issues that we've talked about. And you got trafficked child slaves that are reported in the production of it. Why on earth would we want to limit the ability of Americans to go mine cobalt? Now, I might say, well, that's kind of great because I actually still want the internal combustion engine.
Today, we're diving into a heated exchange between Representative Chip Roy and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about electric vehicles and cobalt. The U.S. relies heavily on China for cobalt, a key material in EV batteries. This debate touches on energy production, human rights, and the environment. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video.
I actually think it's more affordable and better for the American worker who wants the plumber in San Marcos, Texas to be able to go to work and afford the car. But if you buy into the motion of having, EVs that you can drive all over creation, even if you're from Texas and you had to do like I did, I appreciate the chairman pointing out the passing of my grandma. I had to drive 6 hours, like 300 miles to go see my grandma Thursday before she passed away, and 6 hours back. I couldn't do that in an EV. I wouldn't be able to make the round trip in time. But okay, assume we were able to ever produce the batteries that last long enough, the charging stations, all the stuff. Why would we get rid of the American production of it?
Thank you. There are several different components to your question. I want to make sure that I address them. First and foremost, on the issue of child exploitation, child labor, I think it is the role of the United States for us to push back forcefully on this production, and not just in the production of energy, but across the board. We see this in textile production, energy production, cobalt mining. It is horrific, and we need to make sure that our sources do not include child labor. But to get to the core of the question, too, on the China front, is that I find it interesting that there is this concern about Chinese ownership of minerals, and it is legitimate. However, the response to that seems to be deregulation specifically for companies that are largely Chinese-owned here in the United States. These companies are subsidiaries where the benefit of what we are deregulating here, and I'll give you a specific example. I would be remiss not to mention that the minerals produced specifically at the proposed Twin Metals mine that is implicated in this legislation would most likely be shipped to China for refining and smelting to be sold on the global market. These are not American-owned companies that American mined minerals would be going to. Thank you. And so, I
appreciate that. Before I give my colleague a chance to respond, as I think he probably wishes to, I would only note that happy to have a conversation about restricting Chinese ownership of any number of corporate activities in the United States, or ownership of farmland, or ownership of land near military bases, or frankly, ownership of meat packing, production, including mineral production and so forth. A significant reason why it would be mined here and shipped back is because they've got all the production facilities, because they've been building and mining these, because they've got the resources to do that. And here we've got the God-given benefit in America being able to produce very clean burning natural gas, very efficient ability to have automobiles that have an internal combustion engine, which are basically fractionally about a 1.5% of the CO2 production when you compare it to what we're producing in China, as the gentleman noted, where they've got 1,100 coal-fired plants burning in China, and we have 250, and they're building 2 a week, and we're building none. And yet we're building no nuclear plants except for the Georgia plant that was finally put online 45 years after it was permitted by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So I think if we're going to be serious about it, we can't say. I just don't accept the premise that the sort of general notion of, well, we got to push back on the child labor. Well, I mean, we're going to use that child labor unless we find a supply right now, because the Biden administration has put their foot on the gas to say we must have EVs in 2030 at the extent of 2/3 of our entire production line. So Toyota is not a Chinese-owned company, but Toyota has a massive production facility in San Antonio. Tells me that they will largely have to put their entire assembly line starting next year into EVs pretty much only, because they can't financially afford to do otherwise with these mandates on the tailpipe rule, which will be shutting down the internal combustion engine production of the Toyota vehicles. No Chinese ownership there, because that's where they are, which will then mandate the EVs, driving up the price of those vehicles. And then they got to go figure out how to get the batteries and get the production. I know the gentleman seemed like he wanted to jump in on that, and so I'd like to give him a chance to respond.
Cobalt is crucial for EV batteries, but China controls much of the global supply. This puts the U.S. in a vulnerable position. Chip Roy argues that relying on China for EVs and renewables is risky. He also raises concerns about child labor in cobalt mining in the Congo. AOC acknowledges these issues but defends responsible mining and battery recycling. Recycling could reduce the need for more mining, but China's dominance in mining remains a concern. Balancing energy production and conservation is crucial. A thoughtful approach is key. From cobalt dependency to child labor concerns, these issues are complex. Should we push for EVs at all costs, or rethink our material sourcing? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you found it insightful. Thanks for watching.